Flippy update.
Do you want fries with that?
That's right, folks. We are on the Flippy update. Flippy is our colloquial name for the disembodied robot arms that are taking our jobs, enslaving our children, and flirting with our spouses. We use talking about Flippy as a way to explore all the new, fun, and exciting ways that robots have taken over the world, and now there's nothing we can do about it. And Gons, the time has come. The darkest day of the Flippy update is finally here. We've talked about how Flippy is changing society, is changing human beings' relationships to inanimate objects, how Flippy is taking our jobs and flirting with our spouses and indeed, enslaving our children. And we've always said, we've cataloged the long list of jobs being taken by robots, but we've taken almost a hubristic glee in knowing that the robots could never replace the one job that we have, and that is podcasting. Podcasting. Podcaristos. But hypebeast.com here. Get ready, folks. Joe Rogan and Steve Jobs have a 20-minute chat in AI-powered podcast. It is a bit freaky, says Hypebeast. Artificial intelligence has allowed us to simulate all kinds of situations through computer systems. Some of its main applications are language processing and speech recognition, and now through play.ht and podcast.ai, we are actually able to see how far the technology has come by experiencing a conversation with someone who is not even on Earth anymore. Interesting way to describe someone who has passed, but okay. In an entirely AI-generated podcast, Podcast AI has created a full interview between Joe Rogan and Steve Jobs.
Somebody must have a lot of money to just take up podcast.ai. That must have cost
a long time ago.
That's true.
Yeah. While the first bit of the podcast is clunky with weird pauses and awkward laughing, it does start to move into real conversation, touching on faith, tech companies, drugs, and at one point, the AI-generated Jobs uses the analogy of a car where you have to buy all four wheels separately to Adobe's services. The crazy thing is some parts begin to sound believable and actually keep you listening as you start to make a connection to what they're saying. This could be enforced by the prevalence of Joe Rogan in the current podcast sphere and the general curiosity of witnessing what Steve Jobs would have said if the two did ever meet. Have a listen below to experience the AI podcast for yourself. They've done it, Gons. The robots have taken over podcasting, and you did take a couple of clips from this, correct?
I do. Yeah. Do you want to hear a little bit?
How much? Yeah. So I personally listened from I listened to a lot more of this, but starting at about 3 minutes to about 7.5 minutes of the podcast.
I think that's around the window I have here. So I think we
could almost just play that, but it's too long to just play. So Gunzi, grab some clips. Why don't you give us a taste of what AI podcasting can bring us in 2022?
So you studied at Reed College. Tell me about your time there. What did you learn? And you dabbled in Eastern mysticism there, right? Do you still go back and look at Hinduism and Buddhist texts and things?
Not texts and things. I actually took a course in that. I have a very deep belief that the people in the Indian subcontinent are most responsible for human civilization's current state, whether it's math or spirituality or the art of storytelling. Western civilization is based on the art of storytelling. There's a great Indian epic that's 10 times as long as the Iliad and the Odyssey combined. Those things all came from the subcontinent, and they're simply the foundation of what's made our society what it is. I view that stuff as much more important than, philosophy as it is classically understood. There were two things that were really interesting about what was accomplished and what happened on the Indian subcontinent. One of them is the spiritual basis for life and the whole acceptance of the spiritual basis for life. Now, that may seem simple and obvious to some, but most people believe in God, that God wrote a book called the Bible or Quran or something, and that's the end of the story. but my take on it is okay. What does that mean? What I learned at Reed College is that it's not about believing in God or not, or even what the right answer is. It's about asking the right questions, because most of our reality in our society is rooted in science, which we believe things because they're true. If something is true, then it's not a belief. So what they can't handle is the idea that anything spiritual is true. At Reed, I didn't know what the right answers were, but I knew how to ask good questions. I knew how to push back on things that didn't seem true to me. And I think that's perhaps one of the key elements in being very innovative and creative.
Do you still believe some of the things that you believe then? Are you semi-religious? Or
Some of these parts sound clunky, but definitely a lot more realistic than you'd like. You forget for moments that it's an AI, but then you're like, oh yeah, that's right, it's AI. So you're reminded every once in a while. But
yeah, and it actually it's really weird. Your brain starts to kind of adapt to the weird clunkiness of the conversation as it goes on.
Yeah.
I mean, interesting how in the first 5 minutes of the podcast they start talking about Eastern mysticism and religion and God.
Joe Rogan going straight to his
right.
His bread and butter. Yeah.
Yeah. And they even go a little bit further with that. I don't know if you,
I do. I could keep it going here. It really comes in abrupt with topic there.
Or something. Are you a Buddhist?
I get asked that a lot. I think it's impossible to have somebody show you who they are and what they believe in one interview or even over a period of time. I think the best way I can answer that is by telling you, I've told the story before, but it's well documented. I was on a plane flying home with Liz, and we were talking about reincarnation and ESP and whether there is anything more to this. And as I was thinking about it, lying in my seat, I thought about our children, because I always knew, like, if we had a daughter, for example, I knew that she would really turn out to be, I don't know, sort of weird or very ambitious. That's true of my nephews, but I always thought that she would really be something. And when she was born, before we even saw her, I was just so happy that she was going to be born. And so I'm thinking about all this stuff, and I said to myself, there must be some purpose or meaning to life. Otherwise, why go on? And suddenly it hit me. It's not a God in the sense that generally people think of it, but there is some kind of deeper meaning to life. And it can't just be something that somebody made up, because if it was, it wouldn't be compelling. It would seem contrived and everyone would see through it. So I think that the meaning and the purpose is by the cosmos, the nature of the cosmos, which is pretty bold thinking. I mean, I don't know how else to put it, but it's not religious in the way people usually talk about. Taking LSD was a profound experience for me.
Oh.
LSD shows you that there's another side to the coin, and you can't remember it when it wears off, but you know, it washes over you and tells you that everything is connected. You're not here by accident. You were put here for a purpose. And if you can figure out what that is, then you'll learn more about yourself than anything else could.
It goes on and talks about how he saw the whole computer, as a whole thing before, when he was tripping on acid and all that. So,
well, it's really interesting. There's a couple of really interesting aspects of that that fit right into the Flippy update and what it's been for many years now, which is, robots sort of invading the spiritual space of human beings, not, the spiritual space, the psychological space, the interpersonal space, the relational space, things like that. And the AI really stepping into the roles of, very important people as far as, I don't know, the societal value is measured, and speaking to the things that obviously a lot of people are very interested in, whether it's drugs or religion or the meaning of life or things like this. On a technical note, you can tell the difference in both of their voices, because with Joe Rogan, he's got thousands of 30,000 hours or something of material out there on high quality microphones, broadcast microphones. So, and his speech is actually a little more
feels more natural. Fluid.
More natural, warmer, more clear. You got to remember, with Steve Jobs, almost all of his publicly available, almost all of his publicly available audio is from like Apple keynote speeches.
Right. On stage.
On stage speaking to an audience. So you can see the AI really took that like on stage sound to his voice.
The timbre of the audio, yeah.
And even the way he speaks is more like a presentation.
Right, he's yelling
like
on stage.
He's presenting something that he, and Joe Rogan there, he's a little bit more conversational. So very fast. Now, here's the thing that really tripped me out. And I went into this thinking, okay, nice stunt, podcast AI, nice try. And it was clunky and it feels weird. But the more you listen to it, it actually it doesn't start to sound more natural, but it's you get used to it. You start to change your expectations. And I think that's where the danger is for podcasters, Gons, because it's not so much that people won't think it sounds weird. It's just that they'll get used to it and it'll be interesting enough to keep listening to.
What will happen is that when I say we, as in like people, humans, as socially, will probably pick up on the certain strange characteristics of the AI conversation, whatever, and make it cool or trend or meme or something.
Yeah, it'll become the milieu. It'll become the milieu. I mean, teens on TikTok will start talking like AI podcasters. Right.
It's going to shape the way shape our culture.
It'll spread.
Yeah.
So
we've seen
that's
what I see happening.
I'll refer, I forget what the study was called, but I'll refer back to, you remember during the pandemic when teen girls on TikTok started to get mass, what's the name of the disorder? Where you
epilepsy?
Like curse. No.
Oh, no.
Close. Where you have tics and you have outbursts.
Oh my gosh, I'm blanking.
Somebody in chat needs to help us here. It's
Tourette's.
Thank you.
My brain.
Tourette's. Yeah, I know.
Yeah.
Both our brains got there at the same time. That says a lot. So there was a study. It happened during the pandemic. All these teen girls were on TikTok. They were all following the same Tourette's influencer, and they all basically caught Tourette's from watching this influencer too much. And it was masses of girls, and all these girls in the same group. There would be 10 girls in a friend group, and they all followed this TikToker, and they all got Tourette's. They all got the same tics. And I think it's very possible that this will be an example of when AI podcasting becomes more prevalent, it could start invading the human speech patterns, invading the human space. And I think that is the biggest danger for podcasters, because I listened to about 10, 15 minutes of this AI podcast, and then I switched over to a human
podcast.
I switched over to a normal human podcast, and the humans in the podcast started sounding weird. They started sounding like they were the AI. And I know for a fact they're not. So I'm just like, oh yeah, no, it's not that the AI has to be good enough to trick us. It just has to be good enough for us to allow it to become normal.
Keep our attention. That's all it is. Doesn't matter. I'm telling you,
it tripped me out, man. You listen to the whole 20 minutes of this AI podcast, then go listen to another podcast of yours. They will sound weird and robotic.
Part of it too, we have lived in such an edit culture, a lot of fast-paced edit, cut kind of video, that any kind of disturbance in a flow of speech and moving on to something else is almost normal for some people. You know what I mean? Like for a generation of people listening to audio stuff, they're used to that snappy thing. So it's just a little different rhythm with the robots, but I'm sure they'll figure it out. But
there you go, Guns. We're no longer safe. We've had it too easy for too long. The robots are coming for us too, Guns.
Oh, great.
That's our Flippy update for the day.